In this tutorial, we want to look through the building system within Survival RPG Engine. This will be a three-part overview. The build system includes multiple major pieces of functionality. Buildings appear in the build list based off a building data table. Each build can be free or have requirements that will be shown. There are multiple building states: green for buildable, orange for buildable but missing requirements or moving a building, and red for not buildable. One of the key aspects of the building system is the building manager. We will go over this in part 2 of the building system. There is also a full power system and farming system that tie into building. Building itself is straightforward. You can place buildings in valid building areas. Buildings can have snap points and can be rotated. The building system also supports destroying buildings, which will return the materials used, or moving buildings from one location to another. Let's dig into how this system works. We start in the player controller. Here we have functionality for updating the building UI, getting building requirements, and enabling building mode. These functions all either go to the player state or the HUD. The player state houses the building component, which ties together the UI, the controller, and the inventory to the building system. All of the building functionality lives in the building component. Firstly, we get information on the building manager. Next, there are two main functions, one that enables build mode and one that disables it. These largely run on the client, ensuring that server calls are only made when needed. Because of this, we do pass a handful of information from the client to the server, ensuring the build data remains in sync between the two. When build mode is disabled, we reset everything to ensure it's ready to go for the next time. The building component has no active functionality and only runs when enabled. Enabling the build mode will enable it on the client, first getting the build ID. The build ID is used to find all of the required information about the building and passes it to the build preview. The build preview is a unique actor with limited functionality and is simply used to preview where you're going to build. There is information for rotation and the correct coloring based on if it can or can't be built. Once that is set up, we enable the build tick. By default, this runs every 0.01 seconds, as that provides smooth movement of the building preview. As this runs only on the client, the impact is minimal. This will first load the building mesh from the soft reference, and then kick off the build tick. Firstly, the build tick will check if the build preview already exists and spawn it if not. Next, we set some of the base location and rotation information that will be used for placement later. This information is then passed to the server for if it is needed. Finally, we kick off the build trace. The build trace has a number of pieces of logic that will determine if you can build and where you will build. Firstly, we check for other buildings. This is used for snapping. We then check overlaps. Overlap checking uses the preview mesh origin and is automatically sized. This can be customized in the building data table. Next, we check if the building is within the building manager. If the building does not require the building manager, this is skipped. If the building manager is required and not found, it will return that you cannot build. Next is the snap points. These come from the building master and are based on the building hit, as well as the building being built. If a valid snap point is found, the preview location will be updated to match the snap point. Finally, if no building is found, we then look for a building surface, such as a landscape. Some buildings are snap only. For example, a door can only be placed within a door frame. If not, we check the hit surface and see if it's a valid building surface and return the details either way. While in build mode, the player state is updated for left mouse click to try and spawn the building. Try spawn building will get the build information and rerun the build trace on the server to ensure it is a valid location. Once confirmed that it is a valid location, we then check if we're moving an existing building or spawning a new one. Moving a building will adjust its position and reset its snap points, as well as the snap points of anything it was attached to. Otherwise, we go back to the player state to check building requirements. The build requirements are pulled from the build data and compared against the player inventory. If found, the items are removed from the player's inventory and spawn build is called. Once the building is spawned, it is set up for the building type, manager, power, and power usage. The hotbar is also updated if the building came from the hotbar. The building master contains information for snap points, the building health and functionality for movement and destruction. On begin play, we set up the building. This first generates the building's snap points based on the data table information, and then checks if the building is on the ground. Snap points also have a debug mode, which we will get into in part 3 of the building system. The building will load its mesh from the soft reference and then set its snap points. It will also set up supports. Set snap used is called when another building uses a snap point. This removes it from being usable, ensuring that the system doesn't try and push you to build where something already exists. There are also functions for triggering interaction for doors and chests, as well as the refunding the build when destroyed or moving the build when moved. Finally, the support system will run when an attached building is destroyed, confirming that this building is still attached to something touching the ground and destroying it if not. Next, let's look at the data table. Every building is set up in the data table and includes all the details needed. This includes the building ID, name, image, mesh, building, and destruction classes. Build settings are used to define snap points quickly without the need for custom collisions or complex setups. We will go over these in part 3. Rotate to surface changes how the building is placed between always flat and using the impact normal of what was hit. There are multiple settings for collision and overlap that allow you to customize how a building behaves based on its shape and size. Let's go look at a building that has rotate to surface enabled. Here you can see the foundation is always flat regardless of the shape of the landscape. Same with the bed. The crafting table, however, will rotate to align with the hill on the landscape, adjusting its rotation. This gives you complete flexibility in how you want your different buildings to work. That wraps up part 1 of the building system. In part 2, we will go over the building manager, power, and farming systems. In part 3, we will go over the snap system and building dev tools. I hope this has given you a quick rundown of the building system and how Survival RPG Engine can quickly and easily enable you to create your dream game. For more overviews and updates, don't forget to like and subscribe.